This past weekend, I went to Wichita, Kansas to play in my very first ever OTB chess tournament, the 2026 Kansas Open. Since this is my first tournament, I did enter into the amateur section, so players have to be rated under 1400 to enter. Of course, I'm unrated, and this is the round 5 game analysis video. So up to this point, I've played 4 games, 3 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday morning. This is the Sunday afternoon game at 2:30 p.m. and my record is 3-1. So I'm sitting at 3 points out of 4. And now that we are in the money round, I am in contention to win prize money. Between first, second, and third place, I don't remember the exact split here, but there's roughly $500 worth of prize money for that section that is up for grabs. So this is the highest stakes game that I've played yet of the 5, and I am paired up against a 1200 rated player, and I have the white pieces. So without further ado, we will get into the game. I'm an e4 player, so I open with the king's pawn to the center here, and my opponent plays the Sicilian Defense. They play c5, which actually in the very first game that I played of the tournament and my first OTB game ever, I had the black pieces, my opponent opened e4, and I played the Sicilian. So I am familiar with the Sicilian from black's perspective. It's something that I play and something that I see online as well when I'm playing as white. So nothing that I haven't seen before at this point. I decided to play knight f3, which I believe is the open Sicilian. And so normally online, there's kind of a few ways that I'll respond. One is bishop to c4, which is the Bodler attack, and the idea is you bring your queen here, and then you deliver a checkmate here. It's kind of like a scholar's mate type opening. I do that online in Blitz, and even in the 1300s on chess.com playing Rapid, I have gotten checkmates that way. But in an OTB classical game where we each have 100 minutes on our clock, didn't want to go for a gimmick like that because it's highly unlikely to work, and there are better ways to go about this. The other thing that I sometimes do online against the Sicilian is the wing gambit. I've been experimenting with that recently, but again, since this is my first tournament and the time control is so long, and I don't know anything about my opponent, I want to play solid chess. So I play knight f3, and we'll just have a nice normal game. He responds with g6, clearly intending to fianchetto his bishop. I play c3. He fianchettos his bishop, and then I play d4. He takes, I recapture, and then he plays d5, striking in the center. And so far, this is all pretty standard opening stuff. Nothing too wild is happening up to this point. Here is where I guess I leave book moves. I play bishop b5 check, and so then he blocks with the knight. I take his pawn on d5. He recaptures with the queen, and so at this point, material is equal. He's attacking this pawn. He's attacking this bishop. And so the move that I thought would be most suitable here is knight to c3, and so this is guarding the bishop and simultaneously attacking his queen. So I'm gonna gain a tempo. He's gonna have to move his queen away, which he does. He puts it over here on the side of the board, and then I play d5. And so the knight is pinned to the king. It can't move, and I'm hoping to be able to take it with my pawn. He responds with a6. And at this point, I'm pretty sure that I have an advantage. Like, I'm pretty sure my position is better than his. That's what I was thinking during the game. And looking back during game review, if we look at the engine here, the engine actually gives me, in this position, an evaluation of plus 3.23. Now, granted, I don't capitalize on that correctly. I don't find the correct sequence of moves, and so that evaluation that we have is going to it's going to diminish. So I from this position end up taking the knight, and the computer actually wants me to bring the bishop back. So I trade, which pretty much puts us back to equal. So I'll go ahead and hide the eval bar again for now. He takes, I take, and so I do win a pawn out of that sequence, but it was not. It's not as good as it could have been had I found other better moves. So then he takes my knight, and I recapture with the pawn. So I am up a pawn, but these are now doubled pawns, and it's probably going to be kind of hard for me to hang on to it. He brings the queen to the middle, targeting both of them, and I bring my queen up to essentially offer a queen trade, because if he takes this pawn, I'll get his rook in the corner, and then now I'm defending this pawn here. So he does trade queens, and now we're just going into the middle game with me up a pawn, which, let's see what the computer thinks. Yeah, fairly equal, slight advantage to white. So he brings the bishop out, clearly trying to bring his rook over and take the pawn. I bring my bishop up. I'm hoping he will hang his rook, which does not happen, because that would have been nice if he had brought the rook over, and then I could have had a discovered attack on the rook and the bishop. That would have been just wonderful, but that's not what happened. So he blocks my attack on the rook here, and then I castle. And looking back, I don't like this. I think I should not have castled. I kind of wasted a move, and if anything, I should have just brought my king to the center and brought my rooks in, because like in the middle game here with no queens, there's no reason to put my king in the corner of the board over here, and so I kind of regret that placement. I could have just moved him up and then brought the rooks to centralize them, but I castle, which wastes a move. And so he's kind of able to start getting back into the game here. I really misplay the middle game quite badly. He brings the bishop in, attacking this pawn and this knight. I bring this rook over to support the pawn. The reason I didn't bring the rook from the A file was because then the bishop could have picked it up. So that's why I brought the rook that was previously on F1. And then he brings his rook. I push the pawn so that I can move my rook on a future turn. He brings his king. I bring my rook to attack the bishop. He trades the bishop for the knight, and now I have this terrible doubled pawn here, and my king is just like useless over in this corner. Again, not very happy about that. He takes the pawn, and I double my rooks. I probably at this point, instead of doing that, should have just taken the rook, and then I could have brought this over with check. That would have been, I think, equally fine, or probably better actually. He says I don't want to trade rooks, and then I bring the bishop here, hoping to, I don't know what I was hoping to do here. This probably wasn't the right spot for the bishop. Maybe I was thinking eventually, we'd line up something there, but I think this ends up being poor piece placement from me. So his next move, knight h6, because now he can get his other rook into the game before it had been boxed in. I say rook d5 check. He slides the king over, and I double my rooks again, this time on the 5th rank, because it didn't want to leave my rook hanging there, and there weren't too many other good places to put it, unless I was just going to go right back. And then he doubles his rooks. Rook a5, threatening to win a pawn. He brings the knight in. I play f4, again a wasted move. I should not have done that. I should have probably just taken this pawn. I'm not sure why I didn't take the pawn with check. That would have been, I guess because my rook would have been hanging. But still, this f4, there's just no way that was a useful move for me. Knight h4, and now my king can't go here or here if it ever gets around, so it's really in a bad position. So I'm sliding it over, trying to bring it in. to the center. He gives a check. He's threatening this pawn here. And then I do bishop takes e7, which just doesn't make any sense. I guess in my mind I thought it was like a desperado move because I saw he was going to take the pawn with check and I was going to have to go somewhere and I didn't want to lose the pawn. So then I just sacrificed the bishop. I mean, it makes no sense. Clearly this was a terrible move for me. But I was really hoping to be able to get my rooks in, and for some reason I thought that would work, and it clearly doesn't. So I definitely regret that decision. Then I'm able to get the pawn. He gives a check. I come over. He eats a pawn, and rather than trading rooks, which maybe I should have done, I double my rooks again. He brings his knight in, threatening this square. I give a check. He moves up. I move my rook all the way up, and my plan is basically to bring the rooks back here and then try to get a pawn in. So at this point, if I can get a pawn here, this actually would be checkmate, but I'm not able to get a pawn there. This is where things kind of fall apart for me. My king comes out. He gets another check. I go down. He's able to capture with check, and then we trade everything off. And so even though we're equal in material, as you can see, he's going to come eat up all my pawns, and I'm just not able to get over in time. And at this point, it took a long time on the clock to get to this position. But yeah, once we're in this end game, there's really no path to victory for me. What is interesting about this, I'll advance a little bit further. So from this position, what is amazing, even though he has these two pawns, it's rook versus rook and two pawns, what is amazing to me is that this is a theoretical draw. If you turn on the engine, there is a way for white to hold this position. And in my head, I was thinking there might be a way to still get a draw. Like maybe I can somehow hold this, but I didn't know how. I have not studied rook pawn in games. I do have an in-game book, and I only read up to the sections through I think like 14 or 1600, and it basically said you don't need to know rook and pawn in games until you're higher rated. So I shouldn't have listened, right? I should have gone on and kept reading in the book, but I learned how to mate with the queen, with the rook, with queen versus knight, all of those things, and just kind of the basic checkmating patterns. And the author was basically like, if you're below 1800, you don't need to know these end games. And so I'm really beating myself up because had I studied that in-game technique, I could have potentially held to a draw here. So I was frustrated with that I had that knowledge gap, and that's definitely something that I'm going to come back and have to study. And so I make the wrong move. I bring the king up, and I should have brought the rook out. And so if the rook comes over to the side, it's able to get up and give checks to the king over here. Somehow you can hold it to a draw and keep them from promoting. I don't know. I was playing around with the engine, and yeah, they're kind of seeing how that defensive setup works. But in the game, I didn't know what to do, and so at this point, I just slide my pieces around, and yeah. And it's pretty imminently terrible for me. And again, we had taken so much time on the clock. At this point in the playing hall, there were only like 4 games going on. It was me versus my opponent, and then my buddy John was also in a hairy end game at the table next to me. So we were the last 2 games in the amateur section going. The middle section, the reserve section, all of their games had finished. All of the players in the intermediate section had cleared out. And then in the open section, there were still 2 games going on. And so, the people competing for the state championship title are like the only ones still playing, and then me and my buddy John, like we're the only ones still in the room. The other 30 or 40 games have all come to an end. You know, we're like 3 hours in at this point. Me and Titus have like 10 to 15 minutes left on our clock still, as we're navigating through this end game, where he, you know, has this significant advantage. And so at this point, a lot of people had come over to like watch our game, some of which, you know, was they were waiting around for the tournament to finish. And I think one guy in our section, you know, the result of this game was going to impact how much he got in prize money. But like several other like higher rated players from other sections were just coming over and kind of like analyzing the board. And I think they could see that there had been a way for me to hold the draw, right? Like I think they were watching to see if I could hold it. But at this point, I've made too many mistakes. I didn't know to bring the rook out to the side, and so he just marches his pieces down the board, and he is eventually able to promote. And I keep playing, hoping for a stalemate, but he does not stalemate me. I'm going to turn the analysis off. It actually takes him a really long time to checkmate me. So while this was happening, I actually thought he was messing with me. But I mean, afterwards, thinking about it, he was probably just as exhausted from playing chess all weekend. I mean, yeah, so our brains aren't always thinking clearly, and he's trying to make sure he doesn't stalemate me. And so eventually he delivers the checkmate on move 76. And so he actually promoted to a queen on move 63, and then it took him 13 more moves to find the mate. But regardless, he picks up the win, and he actually finishes in second in our section. So the first place winner, Dwayne, who I lost to in round 3, and then my other loss coming to Titus, finishes in second. So if you look at the cross tables for the event, my only losses come to first place and second place. And Dwayne, you know, doesn't lose a single game during the whole event. He goes 4 wins, 1 draw. Titus doesn't lose a single game during the event either. He goes 3 wins, 2 draws to finish with 4 points out of 5. So both of my opponents that I lost to finished in first and second in the section out of like 24 players. And then they also both didn't lose a single game during the whole event. So I can't beat myself up too much about that. I mean, yes, it was frustrating. I was disappointed in myself that I had a lead in the opening and I didn't play the middle game very well. I made a lot of mistakes in the middle game to let him equalize it and then to let him take an advantage. And then, of course, in the end game, I was also frustrated with myself for not knowing how to hold that position to what could have been a theoretical draw. But when I looked him up on chess.com after the tournament, his rapid rating is 2,000. I mean, so he's a very strong player. And so, yeah, I have some things to learn from this game, and hopefully I'll take all of that into the next tournament. So I wasn't able to place or get prize money, but in my first OTB tournament, I do go 3 out of 5, finish 3 and 2, and they give me a provisional rating of, I believe, 1239. So all in all, it was a very good experience, and I will definitely be signing up for more OTB tournaments, and hopefully I'll be able to take some lessons from these first 5 games I had and come back stronger in the next tournament. So thanks for watching.